Hello, nice to see you back. So I want to talk about imposter syndrome, and this is a topic that's very close to my own heart because it's very much at the centre. Excuse my once again dusky maiden voice. If that wasn't a thing before, it certainly is now. Uh, so yeah, imposter syndrome was a thing that I know now that I suffered with, and it was kind of at the pinnacle of my troubles with managing my own mindset, which I know in retrospect I'd had problems for many years, but you don't really know what's normal and what's not because no one ever talks about it. Um, but kind of coming through the environment that I did professionally, so medical school as a postgraduate, um, then your foundation training, so working my way all the way through the hierarchy, becoming a consultant in A&E, and then doing that for about 5 years in total. So it was when you kind of go through the ringer. You kind of expect to, but you go through the ringer in postgraduate training a bit. It's probably a little bit less like that now. I think you're slightly more protected as a very junior doctor now than perhaps you were when I did it, and also the people before me. Um, will tell you what it was like back in the day, I'm sure. um, it was only really when I got to um, consultant level that it really hit me like a wet kipper in the face. And particularly when I went to, because I locumed for a year, and I think it wasn't too bad when I didn't have a ton of kind of statutory responsibility, I suppose. Where I was a locum, I could kind of show up, do my job, and leave. Even although I always, would always give it my best. It was only when I stepped into a permanent role that I really kind of noticed the problems I was having. So it was a kind of whole host of things. Like I think as a doctor, particularly, I can only really talk in the context of emergency medicine because that's where most of my experience comes from. Um, but you kind of live in anticipation of there being problems to solve and problems that you might not be able to solve as well. So I always lived in anticipation of that. I was always just on the cusp of some new problem that I wasn't going to know what to do with. And that's, when you think about it like that, it's very, very related to how people describe imposter syndrome. So that kind of constant feeling like you're about to be found out. And I did feel like that as a doctor anyway. It felt like every time I advanced a grade or a level or I passed an exam, I kind of thought, oh, that's just luck. Anyone can do that. I'm going to be found out any day now. And then that kind of continued on until I became a consultant. And then I was like, I'm supposed to be the one that people are going to, with their unsolvable problems. And now it's me. The buck stops somewhere, and that buck stops with me. So that I think that's why it really intensified. And I've talked lots about how coaching helped me, excuse me, explore that and make me rationalize it a bit. And then I've kind of since developed my own theories on why things like that happen, which are not, unique by any stretch of the imagination. These are things that many cleverer people than me have probably got nailed by now. But in terms of why I was very prone to imposter syndrome, and a lot of it comes down to just never really nailing what was important to me and what I wanted to do to some degree. So it might seem a bit odd saying that, well, although you went to medical school and you became a doctor and you trained as a consultant, and you're saying you don't know what you want to do. Like, appearances can be deceptive. Um, a lot of the time, my decisions were made on the basis of things that were going on at the time. So, I remember being at school and I remember just doing the subjects at school. I remember not really being 100% sure when you get to the point in school where you can kind of choose what you want to do, not being sure what to pick. And don't know whether my dad will remember this or not, but I remember him advising me to do um, crash higher biology in my final year at school, which I did, and it was probably in retrospect the best decision that I had made academically, because I loved it and I had an aptitude for it. And that led me to then go, right, well, I'm going to study this at uni, because certainly back then that was what you did. Everyone, well, not everyone, everyone was kind of encouraged to. Everyone was going to uni. Everyone was encouraged to go to uni. It's quite different now, with how expensive it is. You need to think very carefully about that now. But that was what I did. So I went on and I studied, kind of biology related degree at university. And it was only when I don't know if I've talked about this, I may well have done in a blog or something. I kind of came across someone in a lab when I was in second year of my degree, talking about how they were going to apply for medicine as a second degree, and that was what kind of set me off down that path. But yeah, I never really. I guess a lot of people don't do this. I'm by no means an outlier with this, but I never really kind of sat down and kind of really thrashed out what's important to me, what do I want to do. So there's a lot of problems with that, when you don't know what your values are, you don't know what your goals are, you're kind of um, you're a bit of a blank page, and there's a lot of problems associated with that. Can't say the word associated this morning. There's a lot of problems associated with that. So you tend to be much more easily led by the things. You get buffeted by winds and currents and other people a lot of the time. So you start to see what other people are doing and you think maybe I should be doing that. You're very, very easily led. Whereas actually, if you have your goals and your values nailed, you're much less likely to do that. You can kind of appreciate what's going on with other people and continue to be well focused on your own goals. So that's, I think, the thing that made a big difference for me with coaching is that coaching actually forced me to sit down and go, like, what are your goals, and sort of think about where I want to be in my life, in in all different areas as well. It's not all about work. Work is one facet of your life, an important facet, but it's about your personal life and about your health and about your personal development as well. Um, so yeah, I think that's a big part of why I got the sort of imposter syndrome, as much as I did, is just purely because I hadn't taken the time to understand myself, know what was important to me. Um, even things like behavior as well. I would be kind of like see people who I perceived to be sort of well liked and popular and see how they were behaving and try and mimic that. I'm going back to when I was a good bit younger now. 40-odd-year olds hopefully don't. Well, I don't anymore, but um, I behave like me now. I have a much better understanding of who I am and what I like and what I want my life to be like. So that's kind of how I behave. I mean, I still get these little flashes of, oh, crikey, what am I doing in this position now? I'm going to get found out at any moment. But, these are ingrained habits that will take time to get rid of. Another little note on the imposter syndrome thing, just while I'm talking about it, you often see discussions about imposter syndrome on professional forums. And most people will kind of go, oh yeah, I've got that, I've got that. Once you get into it with groups of people, you will discover how common it is for people to feel like they're a fraud. It's a very, very common sort of internal bias. So I think knowing that makes it a lot better. But if you happen to be watching this and you're one of those people that says, I don't think imposter syndrome exists, then that's great, fantastic. That probably means that you've never experienced it, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And also, nitpicking over the terminology is not helpful either. So, oh, I don't think it can really be called a syndrome. I call it a phenomenon. Okay, that's great. You call it what you want to call it, but let people experience it the way that they experience it. Because unfortunately, that I feel like that kind of terminology comes across like minimizing behavior, which is not helpful. Is all I've got to say about that. You're free to think whatever you think about imposter syndrome, if that's your experience of it, but it is very common, from both my coaching practice and from various different groups and things that I've been involved in. It's incredibly common out there, and we need to be helping people navigate it, not making them feel worse about it. So yeah, imposter syndrome, very common. Um, comment below if you've experienced it, what your experience was like, and how you've been trying to get past it. Um, but yeah, for me, the key things are, do you have a clear idea of your identity, and your values? And those are going to be the things that will help you feel more comfortable in the skin that you live in. Okay, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.